Someone to tuck you in?
1. Attack commencing. Escort the payload.
Overwatch vs Valorant. As you can tell by the first clip there, if you can't make fun of yourself, then who can you make fun of? What's up guys, Veteran Gamer here, and today's video is a video that I personally wanted to make, mainly because since the inception of Valorant, everybody's been trying to compare Valorant to Overwatch. As you can see in the footage behind you, this footage here is going to go back and forth between both games, Overwatch and Valorant. And one thing that should be apparent is that they don't play alike. They don't play at all alike. So the purpose of this video is for me trying to give my opinion on which game should you or anyone be playing. Now this opinion is based on the fact of, whether or not you're interested in both games. It is possible that you like one or the other. And assuming that you are interested in both or you play both, which one is better at what? And what I mean by this is, like, first and foremost, both games are team-based. So if you're playing in a full stack, that's how these games are meant to be played. Whether it's casually or competitively, if you're playing in a full team stack, that's when these games are at their best. But for majority of the players, they don't always have access to playing in a full stack. It's usually a small stack or they're solo queuing. So the purpose of this video is to help, give you some insight on which game should you be playing for what kind of scenario. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm gonna talk about Overwatch to start. And from a casual perspective, Overwatch is a much better game than Valorant is. I mean, it's not even comparable, right? And the reason for that is when you talk about casually playing either, not only is Valorant a harder game to play because of the mechanical skill required, but also it's the baggage that surrounds it. And what I mean by that is, like, in Overwatch, when you play quick play, if you enter a toxic game, or you're just, whatever the case may be in terms of selfish one tricks, verbal abuse, or just overall frustration. The luxury that Overwatch gives you is when you play quick play, you can just leave that game. There is no real penalty to leaving a quick play match. The only thing that can or may occur to you is you may have your experience capped at 20% gains if you leave too much. But, all you're getting is a loot box for skins, so it's not that big of a deal. So the luxury of, you jump on, you have an hour to play, you can get about 4 to 7 matches of quick play, depending on what you queue as. Where, as opposed to Valorant, your average unrated match is 30 to 40 minutes on average. And if you have something like a lever, you're screwed for that game. You can't leave that match. If you're in a toxic match, or, players are just, not playing the game the way it's supposed to be played, you can't leave. If you leave a Valorant unrated match and try to go back, the game will automatically put you back into that match that you left until that match is finished. If that match is finished, you then suffer a queue penalty that applies to all of the game modes. So there's no way of you actually playing the game at that point unless you have another account and you log into that account. So from a casual perspective, if you only have like 1 hour to play, or you only play here and there, Overwatch is the better game to play. It's just for the reasons that, like, you can avoid the baggage. You can get out of it. Yes, both games feature, other modes that are not necessarily the core experience. Valorant has Deathmatch and Spike Rush. Overwatch has the arcade library that constantly fluctuates and changes daily to weekly. But those games have gimmicks attached to them, and they're not part of the quote-unquote core game experience. Typically, the core game experience is either ranked or unranked. And in terms of casual, for an unranked experience, Overwatch is without question the game to be playing. If you got an hour or you just don't want to take things seriously, yeah, go play Overwatch. Because like I said, if you get those win tricks, you get the toxic players, you have that luxury of leaving. You also have the luxury of that a quick play match is less than 10 minutes. You know, as I stated earlier in the video, you have the option of playing anywhere between 4 and 7 matches in a 60-minute time window, depending on what you queue as. Obviously, DPS you get less because of the increased queue times, whereas support or tank you can get much more matches in. Valorant, 30 to 40 minutes. It's a commitment. You're lucky if you can get 2 unrated matches, and on top of that, you can't leave if you're having a bad experience, or if you just have to go. Maybe you have to leave. Maybe the door rings or whatnot, and you just need to leave. Overwatch is just quick. Leave game, no problem. If you have a leaver on your unrated game, Overwatch will find a backfill for you and help finish the match. There's no backfilling an unrated for Valorant. There is absolutely none. Someone leaves your match, they're gone. You're down a ban, and if your team doesn't forfeit, you're forced playing a game that is not only unfun to play, but it means nothing. There's no rank involved. So for casually speaking, I totally, would say play Overwatch. But if you're looking for a competitive experience, if you're a competitive person and you want to play ranked, you want to climb the ladder, this is where the game does a role reversal, where Valorant is a much better and clear-cut option. Even though ranked in its current state of the making of this video is in a shady state because they just revamped it and it's a work in progress, it's still a better game for ranked. And as stated in my State of Overwatch video, a big part of the reason is you don't have to deal with selfish one tricks in Valorant. The rock, paper, scissors elements of Overwatch is detrimental to the game from a competitive standpoint. I've heard people say, and I've said it myself, where, this ranked match here is unwinnable. Well, it's unwinnable not because your team's trying, not because you have a selfish one trick. The game itself can literally be unwinnable just by your team's hero pool. The example that I'll give is, let's just say the enemy team has a Symmetra, and none of your tanks are capable of playing Winston. Well, Winston's a viable counter, and none of your tanks can play him. Sure, they can switch to that character and try, but, they're not playing their best character. And now they're flexing to a character they don't normally play. They may not necessarily be effective with that character, and it doesn't do anything, right? Another example could be what happens if, for some reason, your team, your DPS, they're not prevalent with hit scan. Well, if the enemy team runs a pharmacy with an Echo as well, you're screwed. Yeah, sure, again, your Genji or your Junkrat could switch to a hit scan, but if they're not very good, they're not very good, and it's not going to solve your team's problem. Overwatch Ranked is not really... It's only really enjoyable when you play in a full stack with a pre-made team. There's a reason why the pro scene is completely different from ladder, especially in Overwatch's case, and a lot of it is because of the matchmaker. Overwatch's matchmaking system only bases you on your SR and MMR ratings. It doesn't account for your hero pool. And this is the problem with Overwatch competitive, is that you can get into a match, you can literally have a good team where no one's toxic, no one's a selfish one trick, everybody's trying, everybody's working together, but just because your team's hero pool of who they can play can't counter what the enemy team is doing, that's it. You're screwed. It becomes virtually unwinnable. That's on top of levers, one tricks, toxic players that you will encounter in any multiplayer game. It makes it worse. From Valorant's perspective, it doesn't matter if somebody's a selfish one trick. I've talked about this in my State of Valorant video, where everybody shares the same hitbox, same health pool, same pool of weapons. So if someone wants to one trick a character, they don't have to worry about the enemy team picking a character that hard counters them. There is no hard countering in Valorant. Sure, there are characters that you can combo together with their abilities, and you could do a breach stun with a jet dashing in to get the kills on the stun characters. Yeah, that can work. You could also counter ultimates. You can counter Viper's Pit with Brimstone's Orbital Strike. So there is that element of, teamwork and coordination as well as counterplay within the characters themselves, but it doesn't make or break the game because the core game is aiming and shooting. Being able to work with your team, game sense, and mechanical skill trumps what abilities you have. The abilities are more of utility based, but it doesn't affect your ability to play your character. Where in Overwatch, a Genji can't outplay a Winston, Symmetra, and a Mei. It just can't happen, right? Especially since we know with matchmaking, they always try to pair everybody of equal skill. You're not going to make these outplays. It's just not going to happen. So from a competitive standpoint, if you're sitting there saying, time is not of an issue here, I have X amount of time to play, it's not a big thing, and I want to play competitively, jump into Valorant. Valorant is much better from a competitive standpoint versus a casual standpoint. And that's just the biggest difference between these two games. A lot of people compare Overwatch and Valorant. They say, Valorant's going to kill Overwatch or what have you. There's no killing of any kind. Overwatch ain't going to touch Valorant. Valorant ain't going to touch Overwatch. You can see by the gameplay, they play differently. There's no correlation between the two games other than the fact that you have heroes, they have their own abilities, and the aesthetic style of the game is to be, comic booky, colorful, superhero-esque aesthetics, but they play differently. I like to call Overwatch basically a MOBA that plays in a first-person shooter, while Valorant is legitimately like a tactical shooter. They play differently. That doesn't mean, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean I'm telling you, hey, if you want to play competitive Overwatch, you shouldn't. Hey, if you want to, you want to. It's your money. You play the game. If you want to play those modes, by all means. You want to play Valorant strictly casually, by all means, do so. But the purpose of this video is to say, depending on your taste, if you enjoy both games, if you're a competitive person, Valorant is probably better for you. If you're a casual person, Overwatch is probably better. Right? It doesn't mean that, one game is legitimately better than the other. You can't compare two games that are completely different. It's like apples and oranges, they're different, right? You can compare Valorant to Counter-Strike, there's a lot of similarities there. But in terms of Overwatch, there's nothing like Overwatch. The closest thing to Overwatch is Paladins, to which, my understanding, very few people play Paladins. So in terms of a market space, Overwatch is virtually untouchable at this point. There's yet to be a shooter that plays as well as Overwatch, but does what Overwatch does, only better. To further prove how the direction of both games are, if you look at the Overwatch League, Overwatch League, obviously it's Premade Teams, but for Overwatch, the sequel, Overwatch 2, which is in production, has PvE content. PvE content is a focal point for Overwatch 2. That's not competitive. That's for the casual gamers. That has nothing to do with a competitive standpoint, But if you look at what Valorant's doing, everything Valorant does is for competitive. Everything, even as rooted as the controversial anti-cheat system that, Valorant uses. Riot Vanguard, as controversial as it is one of the best anti-cheats there are. So say what you want, but at the end of the day, Valorant has been catered and built for the ground up to be a competitive game. It's made by Riot, for crying out loud. They're notorious for it, and if you look at how it's doing in the pro scene, yeah, that's what Valorant is. Again, both games are great and are at their best when it's 6v6 or 5v5, depending on which one. You're playing in a full stack. If you are playing in a pre-made team, in Overwatch, I play pickup games where we make our own teams. I always try to make a team that fills the whole of the other. If I'm playing with, one of my DPS friends who loves Junkrat and Reaper, okay, well, I know he loves Junkrat and Reaper. I know he loves to go on these flanks, so I'm going to play Hitscan. But to me, I'm also a Hitscan player. I love playing Hitscan. So, I do things that I cover areas and grounds that he can't, and he covers areas and grounds that I can't. But again, that's a pre-made team. When you're doing matchmaking and you're solo queuing or in a small stack, you don't know what you're going to get in Overwatch. And, you know, for a lot of people, especially when you're just trying to have fun, you don't want that in competitive. You don't want that mindset of people being like, well, you know, I'm just going to selfish one trick here and cost the team. No, I'm sorry. When you play competitive, winning is fun. But for Valorant, you know, competitive is everything. Casual, I find that I get more frustrated in Valorant casually when I play unrated versus Overwatch. Overwatch, like I said, once I get frustrated, I'm out. See you later. No, I'm done. Requeue if I have to. I'll even avoid a teammate on my team just to make sure I don't get placed back into that match. Right? So, play the game however you want. This is just my opinion. But if you are a competitive person and you care about competitive more than anything else, by all means, you should be playing Valorant. If you are strictly a casual person, you don't care about rank, you don't care about climbing, you just use video games as a way to have a good time, play Overwatch Quick Play. You know? But this is just an opinion. You do what you like with it, but this is how I feel about both games. And for whatever you do, regardless of if you play both games, if you like one over the other, don't have this ignorant mindset that they're the same game. Don't have this mindset of, well, you know, Valorant's going to kill Overwatch or Overwatch is going to kill Valorant. None of that's happening. Not anytime soon. If Counter-Strike can last 20-odd some years, yeah. I'm pretty sure Overwatch is going to last a long time until a real competition can fill their shoes. But in terms of Valorant's on the rise. It's Riot Games. League of Legends, one of the most popular games. Enough said. It's not going anywhere. Play them however you like. But those are just, you know, my perspective on which game is better in which scenarios. Obviously, ideally speaking, get a full stack. Play the game as you want. But to me, this is how both games are. You know, if you ask me which game do I prefer to play overall, I prefer Overwatch more so than Valorant, mainly because I like the idea of switching heroes. The idea of switching heroes on the fly keeps the game fresh. The hero pool is bigger. And on top of that, I just love the way Overwatch plays. But it's been recently where I've been playing Valorant more, mainly because of the frustrations that I get from Overwatch. More specifically, the frustrations of playing competitively. Like when I sit there and I want to play competitively, I'm playing Valorant. Because Valorant is just, it does competitive better. It just does. And I don't, because, you know, I don't have to worry about selfish one tricks, you know, and things like that. It's just a better experience. But let me know what you guys think. Please like and subscribe. This is Veteran Gamer. I hope to see you next time. I'm going to let this final clip play and hope you enjoyed the video and hope to see you next time.
Train harder. Enemy spotted. One enemy remaining.
You will not kill my allies!
One enemy remaining.
They were not
Defenders win.